Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs, at Justin Bizzarro, and at Gorilla Brave, the community we've created for food and beverage entrepreneurs. That all being said, I'm going to jump right to it. I have Shane Nasby of Cledis with us from Nashville, Tennessee. How are you doing today, Shane?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Shane, tell us your story. Let's jump right into it because I'm excited to hear it. I love burgers. Had burgers at your place. Had the one with the jam, as we discussed in the first cut we try to do. That I love it there. So the audience, like, this is a great place to go. It's a little outside downtown Nashville, but it's worth every bit of going to. So Shane, tell us your story. Tell us all the way back from little Shane to big Shane and how you sort of got into this business.
Well, I guess you could say I was born into it. My grandfather, who's Cledis, my restaurant's named after him. So Cledis himself had a little cafe in Indiana where I grew up, kind of in the farmlands and the fields, and it was called the Midway Cafe. It was on US 40, Highway US 40, and it was called the Midway Cafe because it was about 8 miles in each direction to the closest towns. And so this little cafe was basically open for lunch and breakfast only, and it served the local farmers in the community that would come in for early morning breakfast, and then they'd come back in for lunch. And so my earliest memories were, just hanging out with my mom, who was working there waiting tables, and my aunt was there and working, and my grandmother and and Cledis himself was there, and it was like a little small family affair, a little 400 square foot cafe. And yeah, so that was my earliest memories, was just the hospitality industry and just seeing just people come together and chit chat over food. And so yeah, that was kind of my intro into it. And then by the time I was somewhat legal, age 14, the cafe had closed at that point, and I was the town bar, the local tavern in my small little town hired me to be a line cook in the back, and they were kind of paying me out of the cash register under the table, a nice little $5 an hour back in the early 90s. And
yeah, there you go.
But that was my first time ever like cooking for and I just remember like random drunk guy sticking his head back in the kitchen, and that was the best smoked sausage sandwich I ever had, buddy. That good job, and I just remember how good it made me feel that, people were liking the food. And so that kind of, I think, started it. And shoot, from there, I mean, after, a stint in college and all that stuff, I just ended up getting right back into the hospitality industry and worked for, I did the corporate thing for like Ruby Tuesday restaurants, even Red Lobster. Did probably 2 or 3 years with Hard Rock Cafe and was a corporate trainer for them and opened multiple locations for them back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And you got to bartending, and I did front of the house, back of the house, did about all of it, and took a break and got out of that industry and got into the marketing world for a while, for several years, and started a family. And my wife, Angela, and got two kids that are now 16 and 13, a boy and a girl. And we started a family, and shoot, I started doing barbecue. Like 2009, I started doing barbecue competitions on the side just for fun because I love to eat barbecue and I always wanted to start cooking. And so I entered a couple of those and had some success right out of the gate. And so then I became slightly obsessed with barbecue and started that kind of competition. Barbecue kind of grew into catering because people started asking you to do their weddings and stuff. And then it became a full-fledged business when I quit my marketing job and started catering barbecue full time. And then it evolved into a food truck, and then it went brick and mortar with it in 2018, opened a barbecue joint in Nashville. 2019 was our first full year, and then the pandemic hit, 2020. And so everything was great until the pandemic hit. And then we were kind of in a position where we just made the decision to sell it. So we didn't have all the risk tied to everything, personally guaranteed on the loan and all that stuff. So we wanted to get ourselves off of that. And so it was nice to, we had we had a little fresh start here with the burger thing. I had to sit on the sidelines in the barbecue world for a while. And so I just, decided to, let's do a burger joint. And we named it after my grandfather. And so we opened Cledis Burgers in Nashville. I think the 2023 was our first full year. We opened at the end of 22. And so, yeah, we just got 2 full years under our belt, and we're just now kind of easing into our 3rd year, but it's been great. We're about ready to open our 2nd location in Nashville on the west side in the Bellevue area. And so, yeah, we're loving the burger life.
Talk to me about, let's go back a little bit to the line cook or the cook. One, I want to talk about freedom of creativity. Were you given it? Was that part of the job? The other part is when you bounce around, sort of what I'll call bounce around from job to job before you sort of went into marketing, was it with the intent of diversifying your skill set?
Not really. I think when I was, late teens into early 20s, and I think you're just you're searching for like what you want to do with your life. And I didn't even necessarily want to be in the hospitality industry. I just is all I really knew. And I was able to make, good money as a young adult. And, and I liked all aspects of the hospitality. I liked the cooking part of it, but I actually, honestly, early on in my career, spent more time doing front of the house stuff, bartending, front of the house manager. When I was a trainer for Hard Rock Cafe, like I was doing mostly front of the house, working on the customer aspect of it. But yeah, I've always had a creative edge to me. And I think you talking back to being a line cook and stuff like that. Like I always, when you have these corporate gigs, you got to do stuff by the book. But like the small town bar and stuff like that she would let me create some sandwiches and have some flexibility on some things that I would want to put on the menu as specials. And so that was kind of my first taste of being creative. And so that's what really, really got me going, is just coming up with stuff that nobody's ever tried before and trying to put a unique spin on stuff. And started to do that once I got into the barbecue world and started really getting into the competitive cooking thing. Of course you have your staple categories that you have to compete in, but there was always like a anything but category, which means anything but the staple barbecue. Like you could come up with anything, and dessert categories and different stuff. And so I really enjoyed doing those things and started getting into some steak competitions and some burger competitions and started having some success with those. But you kind of have to be, you gotta be creative whenever you do stuff like that. You can't just, serve the run of the mill stuff. You gotta think outside the box a little bit. So
yeah, let's talk about the experience, the value, the skills that you gained during this period of time. How much value did it have in creating what you have now with Cledis?
Oh, everything. I mean, like when you're in a market like Nashville, and I did the same thing with the barbecue place that I started and like with that menu, and also like with the Cledis menu. Like you're jumping into a market that's heavily saturated, and like we still have like every chain imaginable and opening up, and then you have people just kind of flocking to Nashville and opening up their concepts out of Texas and California and East Coast, and so the market is like, especially in the categories that I'm active in, like with burgers and stuff, like you've got to create your own lane. I mean, you can't just, present to the community and to the city the same thing that they can get somewhere else. And so, but with that said, you got to be able to do the classics and the traditional. You got to be able to do that stuff right. And you got to be able to nail that stuff because, the majority of people that come in want traditional stuff. I mean, I would say maybe 30 or 40% are a little more adventurous. And so you got to be able to execute both at a high level, and you got to have a level of creativity. And so coming up with the menus is absolutely the most fun that I have with this whole process of owning and operating a restaurant. And that's why I love being able to do like burgers of the month and specials and stuff like that, because it gives you that creative outlet and you're not doing the same thing over and over and over.
The steps of getting into the restaurant. Let's talk about the first step. The first step is getting into a food truck. I think it's a good, because we have a little longevity in your story. So there's substance to each step and reflection as well on those stages. So I'm going to focus on some of those. The food truck, talk to me about the decision to go from in marketing and where you were, which is a valuable skill. I'll go back to that because you've almost renaissance manned yourself in the industry, which I will agree has made you competitive. I'm extremely and we can touch on that in a second, but I want to go back to the going, like, how do you decide, okay, I'm going to take the leap of faith. I'm going to put money into a food truck and I'm going to launch a concept. I think you said it was barbecue.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is jumping, because especially when you're married and you got kids and you got your mortgage or whatever, like we all have bills and we all have responsibilities, and that was the biggest decision and the biggest challenge, is because eventually, like I was catering on the side because I was doing competition barbecue, and I would do on every now and then on a weekend I would cater a friend's wedding or an acquaintance's wedding, and so that's kind of how we were doing the catering part of it. But like when we really, my wife and I sat down and really just decided to, like, let's consider heavily transitioning for me away from the corporate world. I was doing healthcare marketing for a company in Nashville. And so to be able to transition away from that and to do full-time food, that was a big leap, because you there's a lot of unknown. You don't know if you're going to make enough to pay what you need to pay. It's extremely competitive. So you got to get out, you got to hustle, you got to make sales, you got to get bookings. And there's upfront costs involved too. So that's the biggest challenge. And like, I'm constantly talking to people who are asking me like, hey, I'd like to do this, or I really want to start this, and I really want to do this. And like, ultimately, the hardest thing about it is making the decision to just do it. And that's and honestly, a lot of people can't make that decision. A lot of people get scared with making that leap. And that's what scares a lot of people. So
you decide to go into the food truck thing. When you decided to leave sort of the corporate world, did you target food trucks, and had you already targeted barbecue? Had you already started working out menus, finding a place to target? And the other part I want to anchor in this conversation is Nashville, before, when we're talking about building a food truck, was a little different than everything that's available for the food trucks now for Nashville. Right. So can we talk about that, commissary, stuff like that? Because I want to emphasize that you were sort of in a period in Nashville that was blazing a trail. What I would call, there was a cleansing, no different than Nashville. It's horrible in a lot of ways, but it led to a renaissance period. There's a renaissance man formed here. We're talking to him right now. His name is Shane. Understand the things that are lining up here for the audience, and he knows the food business. He's been trained his whole life to prepare for the situation he's about to be put into. But let's go back to the question, the food truck, the local market at that time for food trucks, commissaries like that, and then like, how do you design a menu, stuff like that, going into a food truck at the time with different restrictions, different environment. Nashville's a totally different place then. I think there was probably 5 hotels in the whole town. I'm exaggerating,
right.
But
yeah. So I think, I was super excited. I got the food truck. I invested into it. We built it out brand new. Honey, it was, so we ended up launching this food truck, and I had, the menu preparation, like I was coming up with some really unique sandwiches that were, with really creative names, because I really wanted to set myself aside and create an element utilizing smoked meats that did not incorporate, just the traditional sandwiches. And I really wanted to come up with like some crazy food truck style stuff to where when people see it, it's going to have a wow factor, And so I came up with this menu, and like we launched, and then I found out how, like, depending on the market that you're in, but like the Nashville food truck market there's a lot. And especially when you talk about barbecue, like there's probably more barbecue food trucks than any other food type. And burgers is probably not far behind that. And so like whenever you're trying to book an event, or you're like, not necessarily like whenever you're trying to book, like get in on a festival or get in like on a food truck trailer park, they're really only going to want one type of each cuisine. And so they're not going to have multiple barbecue trucks or multiple burger trucks. And like there definitely were some more seasoned veterans that were taking all those slots. And so it became a hustle. But what I found out in the food truck world is, talking to all the other food truck operators, is I quickly found out that most of them desire to book private events, and catering gigs more than they want to go up and set up and serve to the public. And because it's better and pretty much checks all the boxes in terms of why it's better than just like setting up somewhere and just serving out of the food truck. And so
Yeah, guaranteed volume would be the main one, I think.
yeah. Yeah, and then like there's also times I remember like prepping tons of like smoked meats and stuff like that the night before a big festival that I got into, and like I spent all this money on food costs and I had all this stuff ready, and then I roll it like we get there and then it's a storm rolls in that wasn't really on the radar, and so this festival has nobody at it, and I'm sitting on all this product, and now I've spent all this money, I've spent this time, and now I have zero revenue coming in because of the weather. And so if that were a catering event or a private event, that would have had a contract on it 3 months ago, rain or shine, and you have one person handing you a check and you're not hoping for customers to come, so there's a lot that it's pretty much guaranteed as opposed to, going out and just hoping people come up to your food truck. And so there's way more positives to that. And like, most of the food truck owners I know, like if you want to buy out their food truck or have them come cater your wedding or something like that, they'll take that 10 out of 10 times before they'll go set up somewhere. And so that's honestly, we ended up evolving more into a catering company even after we bought the food truck because we got so many requests for private events. And I mean, if you're asking me if I'll take a $5,000 check to go do wedding versus take my chances and go set up somewhere and hopefully make that, I'll take the first one all day.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about, I'm going to make a few notes about some things about barbecue in general and as an industry in food. One is it's the most competitive subsect of what I would call the restaurant business in general, food trucks, whatever in general. I think one is there are a lot of barbecue competitions in the world and a lot of chefs, restaurants, food trucks also do those type of things. And so there's a nature of competitiveness. It's also, there's so many barbecue things that by nature, it's less likely individuals want to talk about what they're doing or their secrets or let something out because they don't want anyone to know, because there is those micro edges in the industry because it is hyper competitive. It is also hyper saturated, to your point. So being great at it really requires focus and a business mind and differentiating yourselves, I think. And one of the things just from a podcast and doing business in general, even when I was in production and co-packing, the secrecy for things, particularly in beef jerky and in barbecue in general, were just on a whole other level because of fear of competition and stealing recipes and all that. It was serious because there are a lot of barbecue sauces out there, a lot of trucks, a lot of restaurant. It is a highly competitive industry. People like saying they're the best. There is maybe a macho-ness to it, I would say. And so I just want to anchor that when if there's anyone in the audience thinking about industry, barbecue's great. It is, you have to establish yourself and you have to know how to maneuver in an industry where it's a smaller pond and it's full of a lot of big fish. So that's just for anchor. Go on. And so I comment on any of that. Shane, I didn't ask any questions there, but I sort of commentary on anything I just said.
Well, I mean, barbecue, I think there's multiple things that I could probably point out here, but I will say it is probably the most competitive industry, mainly because there's so many, I mean, there's more backyard barbecuers than there is anything in terms of like people who cook from home, and everybody is if someone tells them that their barbecue is the best they've ever had, well, we've all heard that from a neighbor or a friend or our moms, but people start to believe that and they want to turn it into a business, not realizing like, yeah, it's we're all grill masters in our backyard, but like when you're trying to do it for a wedding of 400 people, like, what I cook for one judge for a $10,000 prize, is different than what I'm cooking for a restaurant, when I'm doing high volume all day, every day. And like, there's so many elements to, and I think that's a big wake up call for a lot of people. They realize exactly what goes into that, And then the other thing I'll say about it too, hitting on what you're talking about, is the fact that like barbecue is unique and burgers is also a little bit like this in terms of people choose, like when I'm talking about just customers and I'm talking about people in the community, like let's say Nashville has 10 barbecue joints that are pretty well known. You know, people choose their one that they like, and they typically choose it based upon relationships or people that they like, but they choose one and they're loyal to that barbecue joint like they are a sports team. Same with a burger place, because someone gets on Facebook and, you know, they get in these foodie groups or whatever, and they're just like, just had the best brisket I ever had at XYZ. Well, here come all the comments. It's like, no, you need to go here. No, this place has the best. No, this place. And like people get passionate about defending their barbecue joint or their burger joint as if, you know, sure, there's a level of competitiveness, but like most of the guys who or girls and guys and gals who own these other joints, like we're all friends kind of behind the scenes. And it's always typically kind of awkward. Like we're not, there's definitely, especially in a market like Nashville, there's definitely enough to go around, and we all subscribe to that, and we all try to support each other as much as we can. So, but the general public doesn't always see that, and they want to pit everybody against each other as if we're all like cutthroat and like we've got to defend this joint because people are now saying that this one's better, and like, so it's a really unique. I often compare it to like a sports team, and the same thing honestly is like with pizza. Like if people has like, this is the best pizza I've ever had, it's like, well, no, you need to go here if you want the best pizza in Nashville. It's like people get passionate about their food spots, and that kind of plays into the whole thing. So
awesome. Let's continue on. Let's talk about the transition from food truck into brick and mortar, because now you're taking your concept, you know, the catering works. You've got this model down, you know that's where the business is. Now you transition into a brick and mortar. Do you keep the food truck? Do you exit the food truck? Let's talk about that transition.
I did not keep mine when I went brick and mortar the first go around, mainly because when you go brick and mortar, it's gonna require all of your time and all of your capital. and whenever you get into like the food truck world, you'll find out like I made the decision to do it in waves. Like I knew out of the gate, like this first year or so, I really wanted to make sure that the restaurant got off the ground properly. We had the equipment, we had the staff, we had the technique, we had the marketing, we had everything that we needed to do to build the brand for the restaurant, because that was the most important, because I had hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt tied to this thing that I was personally guaranteed on. So like it wasn't about stringing myself as thin as possible just to try to generate as much revenue as possible. Like you got to be wise because the first impression is everything. So when you get people in the door the first time, if they don't like it, they ain't coming back, and they're going to tell their friends, yeah, I tried a new barbecue place, it's not good. So you had to put all your focus. Well, I chose to put all my focus in making sure that the brick and mortar got off the ground properly. That's why I did not keep the food truck operational and sold it. After year two, we did make the decision to get another one and hired a catering / food truck person to take that out and to start booking gigs on the side. And that became an additional stream of revenue, that's kind of the way you have to view it. You know, it's because the food truck is a bear in and of itself, and it's an operation in and of itself. And so it's almost like running two separate businesses. And so, especially if you've got a big personal investment into going brick and mortar, my advice would highly be just focus heavily on that and make sure your staffing is great. Make sure you've got the right processes and the right equipment, and really just try to get that thing off to a great start and get that first impression and make it a memorable one for your community.
I love this. Let's talk about Nashville's growing at this point. You start going, the restaurant is doing pretty well, I would guess, if you're bringing in an additional trailer or truck. So let's talk about the transition, because Cledis comes around, burgers. There's a transition from barbecue to the burgers, and if you want to talk about it, I like the creativity. What made your barbecue different, would you say, than than quote unquote the competition? Not that they are being competitors, because we just talked about growing an industry together where all the boats rise together. That's important. But talk about the barbecue and stuff.
I mean, I think I wanted to create a menu, and I wanted to create, honestly, much like the burger spot that I have now, I wanted to create some signature sandwiches and some signature dishes that you just wouldn't find at any other barbecue place anywhere. And, with stacking flavor profiles, making stuff Instagram worthy where people are going to absolutely want to take a picture of this pulled pork sandwich piled high with all these other crazy things on it. And again, like I said, you've got to be able to execute the traditional classic stuff well, but you also have to create a niche and come up with something to where people will become loyal to just one dish that you've created or one sandwich. They'll come back, just have that one sandwich over and over, or that one sauce or that one signature. And so creating an identity in your menu that is unlike anybody else's was very important. And so getting that, I think, getting that established was definitely of the utmost importance. So
I love it. Is there anything you want to add in? Maybe anything lessons learned during this period of time, or the food truck period, or growth that you sort of want to anchor during this time that you felt was useful for Cledis?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think for me is being extremely active in your community, and being the face. People, what I've learned is they buy from people. And so, and that's not just the restaurant or food industry or hospitality industry. That's everything. All of this different sales reps that show up. I use Cisco for my food because of my relationship with my sales rep. He's a friend, and he's been my rep for 6 years. And so when any other food rep walks in, it's not about saving pennies here or saving pennies there, or, oh, well, we can do this or we can do that. It's just well, I don't know you, so I'm going to remain loyal to this. And I think the same thing can be said in any business. People buy from people, and the same thing goes for restaurants. And so for me, it was about making myself available and active and known in the community, because I wanted people to walk in and know, you're not just going to Shane's burger place or Shane's barbecue place. You're going to see Shane and his family. You're going to support Shane and his family. And once people have that revelation and that understanding, then that's where the loyalty comes. And that's where the success comes, is because that's what separates you from all of the chains, and even some of the other quote unquote locally owned, where the owners aren't active. You don't even really know who they are. You think, you got to Google who actually owns it, and so I think that is extremely important, especially getting off the ground. People want to know who's behind it. And to this day, I hate getting on Instagram and doing videos with me on them. But in the beginning, I wanted to introduce myself as the face behind the restaurants and let people know, you're supporting me and my family. And you don't have to come out and say that, but people pick up on that. And I think that's extremely important foundation to lay, especially with a new concept in a community.
Awesome. Let's go through COVID. Let's go through the ups and downs there, the reemergence, the sort of resurrection of you as a food entrepreneur. Talk to me about that period of time. I'm sure there was darkness there. It's hard, the ups and downs, but let's go through that period a little bit.
COVID was, we all lived through it, and it looked different for everybody. Being in the county that we're Davidson County, which is Nashville, there were a ton of restrictions on us during 2020. I will say this, during COVID, I was there. I worked harder and more during that year than I ever did, because, the majority of restaurant staff wanted to take advantage of the unemployment stipend that was available. And so, I still had some that were, quality, employees that were showing up and working, but my staff really, that hurt. It was just an exhausting, not just mentally. Obviously, we all went through the mental part of it, but the physical part of it was exhausting. And when you're So if you take out a business loan, and for instance, we did, and it was several $100,000, but we're personally guaranteed on it. So if this restaurant fails and we default on this loan, I'm losing my house, I'm losing my cars, I'm losing basically my whole life that I have worked so hard to build. And so there's a lot more to it than just, a restaurant that, the restaurant didn't make it, but guess what? The family behind that restaurant didn't make it. We didn't have corporate dollars behind us, deep pockets, it was a very, very stressful year, which kind of led to me basically selling my portion of it to get my name, just to be free from the stress and the anxiety. And so that was the biggest reason I ended up selling the barbecue place, or my portion of it, was because, just because I didn't know if there was a second wave of COVID coming. Like, it was just so much unknown. And so I sold that in 2021 and had a little non-compete. So that's when we decided to do burgers instead of barbecue. And I always wanted to do burgers, and I was staying in my lane. It's meat and it's fire. And so it's simple. And honestly, I love the burger business. There's way less waste. There's higher margins. Like, from a business side, like, transitioning to the burgers thing was actually really cool. And it's different. It's a different process. I would say the majority of it's the same, but barbecue, you're not cooking anything in real time. Like, you cook it the night prior and you're serving it because it takes like 10, 12 hours or so. And burgers are made to order. And so it's a lot higher, faster pace. So that there was a little learning curve there. But when I launched Cledis, fortunately, I already had built a name in the community. And so I didn't have to reintroduce myself to a lot of people. I just had to reintroduce the new concept.
I love it. Let's talk about picking a location for Cledis. Let's talk about Nashville at this time. Like, it's almost like it's starting to appear that Nashville is about to boom, like 2022-ish, 2023. Like, we're starting to see this surge, massive surge. The hotels are shooting up. Even amongst COVID, there's new honky tonks going up. We see a lot of people moving there from New York and California amongst all of it. So talk to me about, okay, you decide I'm going to do this again. I'm going to put my hat back in the ring, whatever the term is. I'm not great at those. And you're going to go at it. You decide burgers, location, menu, etc.
Yeah. So I love creating the concepts. Like, I had the menu, the concept. I had everything designed. I had the menu laid out. I had all that stuff done in the beginning. Like, that's just fun for me. When I have ideas, I put them in my phone. So the menu was pretty much developed out of the gate because I'd been doing that over time, over the previous year. And so I kind of had in mind. So I wanted to launch with like 10 burgers. I wanted them to be, really unique. And I wanted a simple concept. I wanted to just do burgers and maybe a sandwich or two. And French fries was our only side. We could prepare them a few different ways with like truffle fries and cheese fries and different things. But as I was putting together this menu, like, I wanted to do simple and excellent. That's the two words that we use together with my staff all the time. Because we're simple, we're excellent. I don't have a big prep list. I'm not making made from scratch sides. I did that at the barbecue place, and like, I was, during COVID, I was up to my elbows in corn pudding batter, and like, it was exhausting. And so I was like, man, there's got to be an easier way to do this, because, when people don't show up, or when you have staffing challenges like you do in a market like Nashville, like, I just want to be able to execute at a high level. And then that also allows you, when you're only doing one thing like burgers, it allows you to do it with excellence. And so I knew I had to come out of the gate, because of the reputation that I had built. There was high expectations that this was going to be good. And so that was really important to me to get off to that. And that's why I simplified it. But, like I said, simple and excellent, that's what we wanted to do. So when you talk about the real estate portion of it, again, that's Nashville. So Nashville, you're right. 2022 is like a year or so after COVID, like, when people are like, okay, I think we're in the safe zone here. And people just started, like, it just became crazy. Like, we're talking like more skyscrapers downtown Nashville being built. You're talking about every country music artist in the world is opening a honky tonk on Broadway. Like, the the numbers are astronomical in terms of tourism. I think it's the fastest growing, like I think in 2022 it was the fastest growing city in America, and it might still be. If it's not, it's definitely in the top portion of it. And so when you talk about like choosing a spot real estate to open a burger joint, like it's not like I just sat and just, it wasn't a buyer's market. Like you can't just like thumb through ads and say, okay, well, this place looks good, let's go look at it. No, like chances are if you found it on the internet, it already had a contract on it, because it's usually, because you've got people from all over the country trying to find, especially second. So the hot thing that everybody wants is a second generation restaurant spot, because they don't really have to build it out. They want something that you can just kind of walk in and bring your food and open up and just kind of redecorate. And so that's originally what we were looking for. But those were almost like we started looking probably January of 2022, and we did not really sign a lease. We probably made 10 to 15 offers and signed letter of intents, or offers to either buy or to lease on 10 to 15 different properties, thinking, okay, I think we got this, we got a good shot. And they all, basically, Nashville was a market where they were just taking the highest bidder, and us being kind of a mom and pop, like we couldn't compete with the corporations out of, you name it. Like they were just flocking in, and they were just overpaying for these spots, and we just couldn't do that. And so we were very fortunate to get the spot that we did. It was an old house that had been converted on the outskirts of Nashville, probably like 5 miles from Broadway, south of it, in a very, very industrial area. And so when we put the offer in on that place, we fortunately, we were able to put an offer in on it before it got posted onto like LoopNet and all these other places, these commercial websites where people look for properties. And so we were able to make an offer. And there's also, whenever you're looking for a space, like, people in Nashville know, like, the FF&E is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Typically, when people are trying to sell a business or sell a property, they want you to buy all of the stuff with it. And even if you don't want it, like, I had to say yes to everything that they were saying. Like, I'll give you an extra $200,000 for all of this stuff, just because somebody else is going to offer them that, and you basically have to do it if you want the spot, if you're gonna contend, and you basically just have to look at that as like a deposit or something, So hopefully that's making sense. But like, we ended up getting this spot and had a little area in the back for a beer garden already, a little, so it's not very big. It was only like 1,200 square foot building with, but it sits on a half acre lot with, we put have a beer garden in the back with a stage and stuff. So tons and tons of outdoor seating, and we made it work. And it definitely didn't look like any of the others that we put offers in on it, but because we were a new concept, we didn't necessarily have to fit into a specific mold. We were able to just kind of like, okay, well, this looks like this is our brand now. It's an old hole in the wall, which it ended up being perfect for what we wanted. We all want to go to the old hole in the wall place that used to be a house, as opposed to something that looks like it's a cookie cutter chain. So
talk to me about,
that's how we ended up there. And so we basically kind of fell into our lap, and we were very, very gracious to be able to get in there. And so that's where we'll be.
Talk to me about hiring employees. You've done it with the food truck. You did it with the brick and mortar for the barbecue. Now you're doing it for Cledis. Training, hiring. The market in Nashville is competitive in a way just because it's growing. Are there enough hospitality workers working? How do you hire in such a competitive market? Is there always enough, just because there's a lot of people looking to work in food service by the nature of the way Nashville is? Talk to us about that.
Well, yeah, for sure. It's extremely competitive in Nashville. I think it's been a couple of years since I read the statistics, but I think I read 2,500 restaurants in just the city limits of Nashville. And that doesn't include all the hotels and everything else that would qualify for this industry in terms of hospitality. So, yeah, I've got so many friends in the industry, and basically, like, you got dishwashers walking in making $20 an hour, and then they have or line cooks or whatever. They're making really good money, but like, if someone across the street offers them $22 an hour, they're going to leave, and they're not even going to give you a notice. So it was really like, staffing is is a is a major challenge. And so when I developed the Cledis concept, I developed it with staffing in mind. I don't necessarily have to have a dishwasher because I'm not utilizing a bunch of dishes with what we're doing. You know, a lot of the stuff that we have is disposable. I don't have hardly any prep list. We make our sauces from scratch and we roll beef. But like outside of that, we're not doing any prep like we were, when I was doing barbecue. And so I don't that I'm just, how can I eliminate and get the smallest staff possible? And because what I wanted to do, instead of having 20 people on staff where I have to have prep cooks and dishwashers and like all this other stuff, what I wanted to do is I wanted to create a concept that was so simple that a couple rock stars could pull it off. And that's what we did because, I had these relationships already, haven't been in the industry, but like if you hire great leadership and especially like myself, like I knew I was going to be working there. I was pretty much going to be running the restaurant, especially for that first year or so. Give me someone that can be a clone of me and pay them very well and have them come in and work alongside of you and try not to develop a menu and a concept that's going to require all of the extra positions and the extra staffing. And because there's going to be days where people don't show up. There's going to be days where people walk out on you. There's going to be days where, they're going to be tough. And that's why I'm like, well, give me and my sidekick and we can rock this thing out. And so that was why we created this whole concept in the way that we did, was because of the staffing challenges that we have. Now, if you're in a small town and you're not in a city like Nashville where it's extremely competitive, like small town, like you can hire great people in a small town if you pay them well, especially if you treat them well, pay them as much as you can, treat them well and treat them like humans and be kind to them and go above and beyond for them and and be a great employer. And then, you could be you could position yourself in a small community as the place to work. And I have almost zero turnover at Cledis. We've been 2 years and we have next to zero turnover. And I get people messaging, emailing, reaching out. People come in all the day. Are you hiring? Are you hiring? And we haven't hired anybody in months and months. And it's because we have a small crew, but they're all, I take care of them at the highest level. And that means that not just, with compensation, but also if they have something that they're doing that's unrelated work-wise, honor that stuff, see the person behind the employee, and take care of them. And they'll if they feel like you've got their back, they're going to have your back. And I've got a phenomenal staff now, and I would do anything for them and they do anything for me. And that's the way you got to build it. But it all comes back to don't create this concept that's going to require 15 to 20 employees on a shift. Create one that can be done with 3 or 4, because that's going to be much more manageable than the alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Let's talk about the experience in marketing and sort of that life before this, and what has carried over, and how that experience, that sort of tool, that skill set you were given or pursued, however we want to look at it, how has that helped you in your business with the food businesses? How is that translated?
I mean, it's huge. Marketing, I mean, I've been to some places that have had amazing, amazing food. They were just poorly branded and poorly marketed, and they didn't survive. And so I would even go as far as to saying, your brand. And when I say your brand, I'm not just talking about a logo and what you name yourself and the color scheme that you use. Your brand is all encompassing. Yes, the logo is part of it. Yes, your name is part of it. But your staff, how your staff dresses, how your staff interacts, what's your mission? Would people even know who you are and what you do? Your brand is all encompassing. And our brand at Cledis is solid. And the marketing part of that is people have to decide if they catch you online, if they catch you on Instagram, if they catch you on Facebook, if someone posts about you, or if they read an article that was written about you, or if I go on the local news channel and do a segment, like I want them to make up their mind that they like us. You want people to make up their mind before they ever step foot into your restaurant or they ever take a bite. You want them to have it in their mind that they already like you and that they already like your food. And so back when I was catering, I would make our buffets look amazing and really cool. Like I would use cast iron pots with, I would put our pulled pork in the cast iron pots sitting on old vintage bricks. And that way, like if I'm doing a wedding and when people would come up to the buffet, the first thing out of their mouth would be like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. Oh my gosh, this looks amazing. And they've already made up their mind. They like your food before they ever take a bite. Now all you got to do is just not let them down. You can have average food and a killer display and they're going to love it. If you have a poor display, or if you have like, what's happening here? And then they take a bite and then the reaction is going to be, it's actually not that bad. It's actually pretty good. You don't want that. You want, this looks amazing. And so everything that you put on Instagram, everything that you put on, whether you're doing a TV spot or whatever, everything that you put out there for people to visually see, you want them to, in their mind, be like, oh my gosh, that looks amazing. Because then they've already made up their mind, I love this place. I need to go and try it. And all you got to do is not let them down. And the same thing with service. Bad service and phenomenal food will always be trumped by phenomenal service and average food. And it all goes hand in hand. It's all part of your brand. Like the people that you have like working your front register or people serving and waiting your tables, they're the face of your business. So put thought into who you have in those positions because they are your brand. And so that all is marketing. This whole thing, it's all marketing because you're selling who you are as a restaurant. And honestly, the last thing that I really think about is how does the burger taste? How does the food taste? Because that's important, but it's not near as important as the other elements. Was that person in uniform and have a smile? Was I attracted to the picture of this food before I ever got here? I cannot tell you how many times people come in and it's like, okay, I saw this burger on Instagram. Now I got to get it. And like, all you got to do is just deliver because they've already made up their mind. They like it. And so you honestly, you're selling them and you're convincing them before they ever take a bite. And you've got to it's a labor of love, constantly putting out, like if you look at our Instagram at Cledis, it's almost all food. And that's because that's what people like. I just got to keep that in front of them to constantly remind them of like, this is what you can get here. This is what you can get here. And so it's just a constant reminder. They say in the marketing world, like, you see all these car ads aren't necessarily to get you to go buy a new car as much as they are to reassure the people who've already bought the car that they made the right decision. And so that's really what marketing is. It's reassuring people that, yeah, we are the best. We are the best. I don't say that we're the best, but like we are excellent at what we do. And you are making the right decision by coming here for lunch once a week, because look what we keep doing. Look what we're doing. And you keep putting excellence in front of them to see, and they'll keep coming back. And so that's what you see with like all of the major brands. It's not necessarily to get you to come try it the first time, but get you to come back the second, the third, the fourth, and fifth, and to not get a one-time customer, but to get a lifetime customer out of them. Because the value of a lifetime customer and a lifetime guest is, we're talking thousands of dollars versus, a $10 burger. And so to circle back, yeah, I would say my marketing background has played a huge part in, making the food, food brands that we've launched successful.
Yeah, one of the things I think that you emphasize that I think is important is so many businesses, entrepreneurs, restaurateurs, at the very beginning, particularly if not over their whole life of the business, look at the transaction in the moment with the customer, don't understand exactly what you said, that building a relationship, having loyalty, that's long term. There's value for your business, for your employees, for your family, for your vendors, for whoever you're paying rent to, that the investment is understood that whatever you do from a customer service standpoint, from a reinforcement standpoint, like we just talked about, the marketing is about having that customer come in over and over again. That it's good. It's not about a manipulation. It's about that we are reminding them that they had a good experience, that they want to come back. And I think that that's perfect, because that is a lot of what social media is. It's the reinforcement. It does hook you the first time, but then seeing it over and over again is what drives the individuals back. It's why influencers and have become so important. The reviews, the everyday person reviewing food joints, most likely without any culinary experience, is the way of the world now. But that's why it's important, is because what we're talking about is that overall standpoint, and they've become part of the marketing cycle for businesses. Interestingly, it's kind of crazy. Let's talk about creativity. This will be my second to last question. Creativity, it's important to you. Developing fun products, developing unique products. There's always the burger specials, and the couple times I was there. So talk to me about developing those. Where does that come from? Is it a part of something you're still involved in? Let's go there.
For sure. Yeah, creativity is, you got to have a creative outlet. And I think that's the fun part. I mean, you can only post pictures of the same burger over and over so many times. And people want that, like, especially as you start to establish yourself, you're going to have regulars. You're going to have a lot of regulars. Like, it has shocked me. Like, I had no idea when I went into this business how many friendships I was going to develop just having regular customers. And so we have some regulars that, majority of our people just want to try something new all the time. And so that's the beauty about doing, specials and things like that, is because it gives you a creative outlet. And yes, as of now, I'm pretty much the one who creates everything. But I think it is important to, like, if my staff comes to me and is like, hey, you should consider this burger, and like for burger of the month. And instead of being that boss or that owner or that chef or whatever, that's just like, okay, I'll consider it. I think the response should be, yeah, why don't you do that for March? Why don't you do that for the burger of March? Are you cool with that? And like, empower your staff and, let them come up with something creative and let them do something and give them credit for it. Like, don't just lay low, but be like, name it after them or something like that, and just see the pride that swells up on them whenever that happens. I mean, and obviously it's got to be good. Like, if it's something that they recommend and it's just like, okay, well, I mean, I've had a lot of those where it's just like, okay, well, we'll consider that. Or maybe like, have you considered maybe we could swap this out for this, because that would be awesome, but anyway, yeah, you got to have a creative outlet. You got to have and that's the thing that separates you from chains as well. You hardly ever, what most corporations do and what most chains do is they pick out something off of their existing menu and run it as a special. When you're constantly rolling out new sandwiches or new burgers, and I try to stick with seasons whenever I do that. Like, I'll do like we do every October, because it's so fun. Like, right in the fall, we'll roll out our brat burger, which has a bratwurst sliced in half on top of the burger with grilled onions and sauerkraut and spicy mustard. And like, that's the one I think I can't really change in October, is because people tend to like, it's almost October. It's almost like the Shamrock Shake in March at McDonald's or something. Like, it's become like a staple. So, but yeah, so then it's just fun, just having fun with it. But yeah, there needs to be a creative outlet, because that, again, that's what separates you from all the corporate spots.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It's the maneuverability. It's the thing that keeps your food truck, your business active. And one of the things that you have going for you, and it's as simple as this: David versus Goliath. You have a giant Goliath in this giant armor with this giant sword and this giant shield, and you have someone who's been trained to sling a rock in the military at that time. So we're talking about agility versus being big. You want to be able to be creative. You want to be able to be nimble as a business. And what I like about what we just said is you're training your employees, your team members, to be the same way by allowing them to be part of this process. I think that's important. I'm going to anchor this even further for the audience. Flaming hot Cheetos, which would become flaming hot Doritos, which would become flaming limon, Cheetos Puffs, which popcorn, you name it, flaming hot, bags upon bags of it, people cutting it open for walking tacos. Okay. That little phenomenon was because one time, okay, a little bit of one time they allowed the creativity to come within, not outside of the company. A lot of people run contests and they work and they're fun. We've seen Lay's do this in other ways with their potato chips and sausage and gravy, and there's been some successful ones, but not the same success of having someone inside. He was a janitor, just so we're aware, in a facility. I'm not 100% positive of the whole story, but that just gives you an idea of what we're talking about here in the audience. It's important to let those that are in the business that see it maybe from a different perspective to allow in the creativity of your business. And I know this is going to also sound crazy, but as you scale your business, guys, you need to not lead your businesses anymore. You need to facilitate the leaders and allow them to lead and take turns leading and allow them to grow in leadership. And that's what we're also talking about here by allowing this and sort of correcting it. And we're talking about loyalty and the team members, they're growing them. I have to imagine that there's team members that maybe have grown enough that are part of your growth strategy as you move into a second or third location. I asked another question there, even though I have a different one. Sorry about that, but that's sort of my question.
Yeah, and as we're talking, something popped in my head. So yeah, empowering and equipping your leaders. If you have any desire, if you want to be a mom and pop and you want to be like, you want to have your one spot and you want to be there every day, cool, like roll with it, still try to empower your staff if you want to keep them and treat them well. But like, if you have any aspirations to grow or to expand or to do a second or a third or maybe in a fourth location or even do it a different concept on the other side of town, I can't stress enough, like empower and equip and give flexibility and leniency to your leaders. Now, make sure you choose the right people. Don't just be like, well, I've got this manager here. And like, if you don't feel like they're equipped, then don't do it. But one of the things that just popped in my head. So Tony Dungy was Super Bowl winning coach for the Indianapolis Colts back in 2006 or 7. He had a book that was out. It's called Quiet Strength. I read that. And one of the things that I took away from that is someone approached him and they said, what makes you such a successful head coach? And his response was, I hired a great team, I hired a great coaching staff, and I let my coaches coach. And whether that's your offensive coordinator, your linebackers coach, your defensive coordinator, your DBs coach, your special teams coach, like he's got 15 coaches underneath him. And he said, I let my coaches coach. He's getting the glory as the head coach, but he says, I let them coach and I trust them. And so in the same way, whether you have a front of the house manager, a back of the house manager, a kitchen lead, a bar manager, like let your bar manager come up with the drinks to, like let them do stuff, like let them come up with like specials to run and like give them some leniency and do it in front of customers. Like it's like if I've got someone that's just like, hey man, Shane, would you ever consider doing this? And I'll just be like, well, that's up to Ryan, and just kind of play it off in front of my staff so they can empower them. Give them a voice, and especially in front of the guests, and that's the kind of stuff that will keep your team loyal to you because they know that you trust them and they know that you believe in them and they know that they're being validated and their opinions are being validated. And that goes so far with your team, especially if you want to because your manager, your front of the house manager might end up being your general manager at your next location. And they're going to have your back if you have theirs. And if they feel like you're in it for them too. So, yeah.
I'm going to anchor this again for the audience, for everyone. I'm going to anchor this. That book, I've read it, and I'm going to just tell everyone this. He built a team around him. I think he was in Tampa Bay first. I don't remember the position exactly. Maybe, he was head coach at Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken. Then he went to Indianapolis, built the same type of team. Let's remember that Tampa Bay was an early team back then, but he built a structure and infrastructure that would later benefit Tampa. They would go through some dark years there and not being able to go on TV and stuff, but that I'm going to anchor that. The other one is in Indianapolis. He goes there in 2000, early 2000s. I can't remember, but somewhere around there. he builds a team. He gives the leadership responsibility to the individuals, his coaching staff. They can lead. 2005, his son commits suicide, his eldest son. Now, mind you, they have 3 biological children and I think 8 or 9 adopted children. I can't remember the numbers. Extremely giving human. All of a sudden, in a family with abundance and all that they have, the son commits suicide to their oldest son. You know, the first son, the one that's always feels like the miracle, right? So, 2005, Indianapolis still goes to the AFC divisional game. They lose to Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, not super great, but amongst going through all that, you're the head coach of a team that still leads a team into that. Okay, 2006, they're the Super Bowl champions, Indianapolis. 1 year later, guess what? He built a team. What's important is amongst his loss and what he went through, because he had instructed all of them to be leaders, they bonded in a way during those years that led to AFC games, championships, and a great reputation. They had already known how to win and get there, but they didn't win a Super Bowl until 2006, which is weird. It's after a year of such loss to him as the leader.
Yeah.
So why is it important, guys? You can't lead forever. Your legacy can't be built on you alone.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
And I believe 2 or 3 years later, his successor was on his staff during the Super Bowl run. It was Jim Caldwell was the assistant coach on his staff when they won the Super Bowl. Whenever he stepped down and retired, Jim Caldwell took over the head coaching position, and he, following in the footsteps of Tony and being on that staff, also took the Colts to the Super Bowl against the New Orleans Saints just a few years later with basically the same team. And so that just kind of goes to show like the level of succession that has happened. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a good example. This is going to be my last question. It's actually tied in perfectly. Mentors, education, growth. How do you, just beyond the creativity, mentorship, maybe some of the individuals you've had in the past, but also in the present, how are you staying growing, active, legitimate? Because Nashville is probably one of the fastest growing markets there is. So there's a lot going on there. So let's talk about all of that sort of in one question. Does that make sense?
How am I a mentor?
Yeah, no, not how are you. Have you had mentors? People that have helped you get to where you are, no different than reading a book. I think that would be sort of an education there, a growth. How do you personally keep yourself growing? You are a Renaissance person. I believe that you keep getting more skills. You stay in your creative zone. You've collected a bunch of skills for a different tool belt. You're now collecting the skill of growth to multiple locations. Talk to me about education, growth, that type of thing for you.
For me, like I said, I think I've learned so much on trial and error, and like right now I'm even learning more, like in terms of just like whenever you're building out a space and dealing with contractors and codes and departments and things like that, like you're always equipping. There's always something else to learn. There's always, more to learn, and I think whatever season that I'm in, like, for example, when I first opened my barbecue joint, like Kerry Bringle, who the owner of Peg Leg Porker in Nashville, which is a very successful barbecue joint, when I went to him to like ask him like the flow, the setup, the equipment, like how to set my kitchen up and like to do high volume and transitioning, because he also transitioned from, the competition world into opening brick and mortar. And so as a friend, like he didn't say, "Oh, this is another barbecue joint in town, I'm not going to help." Like he did everything. He was an open book, and I would just shoot him a text here and there, be like, "Hey, is this what you got? Or what do you think of this?" And he was super helpful, and then like different seasons and like, for the burger joint, I have a friend named Tim who was the longtime general manager of a very successful burger joint here in Nashville. And I just hit him up and I'm like, "Hey man, you want to come help me? Like, can I pick your brain and can I borrow you for like a week to help me get this burger joint set up?" And so it's one, don't be too proud. Like I'll play dumb all day if it's something that I don't know. I'm not going into it like, there's certain things that I feel like I'm confident in, but there's also like if someone has done something and has like lots and lots of reps, chances are they've made some mistakes along the way, and they've learned what not to do. And a lot of times it's just picking their brains and just hearing that one thing. And they're just like, by the way, don't do this. Don't buy that piece of equipment. Don't hire from this place, or don't do that. Like, avoid that, like, or don't use this cut of this kind of meat, like hearing that kind of stuff is like, hearing that kind of advice is good. And I think I haven't necessarily leaned on one person, but like, I think just kind of pulling from any resource given the season that you're in right now. Like, I've got some friends that I'm talking to now that have grown multiple places, and they've went through the permitting process and the codes process and like all of the stuff that I'm buried in right now. Like, it's just different seasons call for different mentors. But with that being said, like, try to be as generous with your time as you can, especially whenever it's someone in the same position. Like, I can't tell you how many times people call me and are just like, hey, I want to buy this food truck. What do you think? Or I want to do this. What do you think? Or I'm looking at this building. What do you think? And I'm like, I'm happy to chat with you about it and give you my thoughts, but I'm also shooting straight with them. I'm like, you're looking to paying $15,000 a month in that space, and there's hardly no parking. There's this, and this. And like, it sucks to be like a realist in those moments, but they need to hear it. Otherwise, they could lose everything that they've ever worked for. And like, they could, they take out these loans and they try to open these restaurants without looking at every single aspect. And, so I try to be a voice for others whenever I can, and lean on others whenever I can. But like, just set all the pride aside. Don't be a know-it-all, because there's no growth in that. Like, you'll hit a wall sooner or later, and it's just best just to be humble and just ask people for help.
Absolutely. A big reader. I agree. Doing research. Sometimes it's mentors in the physical form or asking people in the moment. Other times it's growth in other ways. There's other things. One of the things I want to emphasize for everyone, I've read Quiet Strength also, but I don't remember when it was, maybe around 2013, someone threw on my desk. I was just finishing up graduate school as an entrepreneur, being an entrepreneur, and got my MBA. Someone gave me the book called Mentor Leader by Tony as well, Dungy. Great book for anyone. It really, that mentor, being a leader in your business, leader in your teams, and also being a mentor at the same time, and growing the humans, growing your leaders. To further emphasize what we talked about on this episode, that's a good resource for everyone. I'll tell you that book, significant weight as a human, significant weight as in leadership skills, significant weight in how he designated and grew the individuals, the teams, the people around him. And then to the point of Shane, is what he also did was built a legacy that continued on long after him with the same players in the same team. Interestingly, most of that Indianapolis Colts team stayed together for a long time, and they did win 2 Super Bowls, Peyton Manning, and then the third he won here in Denver. So, Shane, is there anything you want to say as we close out? Is there anything you want to add into the audience? Anything like that? And also, where can they find you online? Where can they find your locations when they're visiting Nashville?
Yeah, I would just say to anybody out there who's, looking to take the leap, don't be scared to take the leap, but also do your research and do your due diligence and ask all the questions and get all of the information, because the last thing I want to do is tell people, yeah, go for it, do it when they're not really prepared to do it. They think they are, but they're not. And so there's just a fine line there of just like telling people just to, hey, chase your dreams. But I'll say this, typically, if it doesn't make you shudder on the inside in with a little bit of fear, then it's probably not worth doing. And so you're always going to deal with a little bit of that. And so we've all dealt with it, but do your due diligence. And if you feel confident that you're called to do it, and you feel confident that you're supposed to be doing it, then eventually you're just going to have to take the leap. And in most of the time, it'll be worth it. And in terms of finding us in Nashville, you can find us on, first of all, on socials. Love Cledis, LOVECLEDIS, is on Instagram and Facebook. And Cledis.com has a link to all that stuff too. We've got our location in Nashville, about 5 miles south of Broadway in Nashville on Elm Hill Pike. You can find that also on our website. And then we will be opening on the west side of Nashville. Hopefully February or March, we will have the second location opened. And so we'll have 2 locations open, and also have a sandwich shop that I have opened with a friend of mine, Tyler. Jam Box Deli is open really close to the soccer stadium in the Wedgwood, Houston area, downtown Nashville. So you can check that one out. And yeah, that's our 3 little spots now. And hopefully there'll be more here in the next year or 2.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk to you more about Jambox and maybe do an episode just around that concept when you have more time, or if you want, Shane, that would be great. I'd love to dive into that as well, because I think it's cool as well. So it's totally up to you.
Yeah.
Everyone in the audience, thank you guys for listening in. I appreciate you guys. All the links and information will be in the episode. I'll put the links for the 2 books, for the Amazon links for those books that we talked about by Tony Dungy, on there for everyone. And so that'll be on there as well. There'll be links so you guys can find Cledis when you guys are there. I appreciate all of you guys listening, and I appreciate all the support. Continue to share, support the entrepreneurs that are on the show. They're growing the world around them. They're helping other entrepreneurs and stuff grow as well. And then obviously, if you feel the episode's helpful to anyone, you can share it, subscribe, anything that helps the entrepreneur as well. It also helps us get the information out there educationally, or for the entrepreneurs that are growing as we grow an industry the right way. That's the emphasis here. That's why we have the entrepreneurs we have on here, is to talk about their stories, lessons learned, and then do things the right way in our businesses as entrepreneurs. We get to affect more lives and have more impact and influence than any other business, than any other human. So the ability to create legacy, lifetime goodness, impact on lives, families, whether it's our vendors, our community, our employees, our marketing teams, our PR teams, whatever, our legal teams, our accountants, whatever it is in our businesses as they grow, that influence is bigger than anywhere else in any other industry. So I just want to emphasize that for everyone as we close off here. We have more impact and influence, and we touch more people, customers as well, than any other business, than any other humans in a lifetime. What is it that we're going to do with it? Thank you, everyone. I love you guys, and we're out.